back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys, I am here today to do a book review, and the book that I'm going to be reviewing is the first book in the Parasol Protectorate series, which is by Gail Carriger, and this is Soulless. So, I really wasn't sure what this was when I picked it up. I was recommended this book by a couple of people, Sana from Inkbones Books and Giselle from Giselle Bradley. Both really highly recommended this to me, and then also Michael from Bitten by a Radioactive Book said that he had also read and really enjoyed this. So I was highly intrigued because I wasn't sure that this was going to be for me when I looked at the cover. I wasn't sure what it was about, but diving into this book, I just really enjoyed it, and I found it a very different but very exciting read. So let's get into what it's all about. So this is set in an alternate history of London during the Victorian times, when Queen Victoria is on the throne, and it has steampunk elements. I think I would call this a steampunk paranormal, because that's kind of what it is in terms of what goes on in the storyline. But it is also kind of historical and kind of romance and kind of a bit of everything. So yeah, I don't know exactly how I would definitely define this, but I think probably steampunk paranormal would be the best way of defining it. One thing in this book that really made me smile was the humour, because the humour within this book and the way that things are written is very exciting. Like, the beginning of this book is just hilarious because it is so uppity, so quintessential. It's a mix of kind of, it doesn't take itself seriously, but also it does throw in a lot of very low register language that was used at the time. It's really interesting. It has some really funny, cool words I perhaps hadn't heard of, or that were very rarely used words that are just very fancy, very posh. And it takes a kind of stance of irony, mockery, and just hilarity generally. It's written in a way that just makes fun of the times, but also gives a great story, and also it's just really entertaining. So I enjoyed it so much. One thing I did have a minor issue with, but this might just be me, was that it was set in London, and therefore I expected it to be written in UK English, British English. In fact, it was not. It was written in using Americanized English, which has different spellings. So for me, being from the UK and having it set in like my home country, I noticed a lot of the spellings were Americanized, and it drew me out of the story at times. So just beware that that is a thing if you are from the UK. If you're not from the UK, it probably won't even faze you. I think it was just me being a little bit finicky. So yeah, very minor concern, but it was something that I did take a little while to get used to. However, as soon as I got into the real story and what was really going on, I didn't even notice it anymore, and I was just drawn into the fun and hilariousness of this story. Miss Tarabotti, Miss Alexia Tarabotti, is the main character of the story, and she is a 26-year-old spinster who lives with her mother and her two sisters and her stepfather. So she is a very funny character, and I really was glad that she was the main character because she was very enjoyable, she's very sarcastic, she's very intelligent, and she's quite an unusual woman for the times, because back in these days people didn't expect women to be intelligent. They didn't expect women to really want to go out and do discovering, they didn't expect them to want to be adventurous, and she is all of these things. She's also a very entertaining character because of the way that she thinks about things and the way that she processes things that go on. And I thought she was really enjoyable to read about. She is the sort of character who, in these times, would have been considered very old, and the fact that she wasn't married by the age of 26 would have been highly disreputable and not very sought after. So I really enjoyed her perspective as the main perspective. Like, she has accepted the fact that she's never going to get married, and she therefore makes the most of life. She does things that other people wouldn't do in the times, and I really enjoyed that about her. Her mother is constantly disappointed with her. Her mother and sisters are very much the typical women of the times, and therefore they are very against her escapades, and they don't like it when she gets into drama, and they don't like it when she causes all sorts of scenes. But she herself is a really entertaining character, and I really enjoyed the relationship that she had with her family because it was so different she was so different to them, and the resulting arguments that came from that were really, really funny. The world where Alexia Tarabotti actually lives has vampires and werewolves, and they have been openly revealed to the people in this world, so they actually live as members of society, and they have their own council, which is called the BUR, or BUR, and this basically deals with all sorts of issues in the paranormal societies. In the alternative history, there's also an advisor who is a werewolf and an advisor who is a vampire, both for the Queen, so they are very much integrated into society, and seeing a werewolf or a vampire is not discommon at all in London at this time. Lord Micon is the other character who we see in this story, and he is another character who is rather major, and he is actually the head of BUR, the council. Some other notable characters who I really enjoyed during this story include Professor Lyall, who is the beta for Lord Micon. Lord Micon is a werewolf, and he is also an alpha of the werewolf pack, which means he's the leader. And then we have Professor Lyall, who is his beta, so his second in command, and he's a really, really interesting character. He was not only a great friend and a great advisor for the two main characters, but he was actually a really loyal friend. He was really enjoyable, and he's very nice to everyone around him, so I really liked him. He's very reliable and resourceful, and I thought him highly intriguing, so I really want to see more from his storyline in the future, because I feel like there's a lot that could be done with him, and I hope that we get to see that. I'd really like to see a little bit more of his backstory as well, because there's things hinted at during this story which really make him out to be a very interesting character, but I don't know exactly where he comes from and how he fits into everything, so I really, really want to know what all that is about and how he came to be in the position he is in when we meet him. Lord Akeldama is another one who is really interesting. He is a vampire, but he's not actually part of the vampire crew. He is kind of a lone ranger. He's really good friends with Alexia, and he is well worth mentioning for his superior use of italics and emphasis. He's completely flamboyant and highly amusing to read about, and I really thought that his personality and his conversations that he had with Miss Tarabotti were really, really entertaining and some of the most informative about the vampires and the paranormal aspects within this world. He was really, really funny. He speaks in a highly flamboyant way, as you can tell. When Gail Carriger is writing his character, there are italics in almost every sentence, as though he is really, really exaggerating everything he's saying. Darling. It was hilarious. I really enjoyed his character. I thought he was definitely one of my favourite characters in the book, and he was just very exciting. Plus there are some really, really special moments between him and Miss Tarabotti as the story goes on that were really emotional, really heartfelt, and I very much enjoyed them because I wasn't expecting those from this very light, fun, creative, but hilarious story. Biffy is another character who we see a little bit of in this story, but not very much, and I have been told that he comes further into the story in later books, so I'm very excited. He is a kind of helper to Lord Akeldama. He is excellent at sorting things out and solving problems. He's also a really resourceful character, and he's a really, really sweet one as well, who made me smile, and the things that he came out with are really, really enjoyable. He's just a very helpful and nice character, so I'm really looking forward to seeing more of him in the future books. Ivy Hisselpenny is a really, really interesting character too, who's definitely worth a mention because she is the best friend of Alexia Tarabotti, and Ivy has an absolutely terrible taste in hats, which is a major part of her personality. She is also very delicate, she's very sensitive. She's not anywhere near on the same level of adventure as Miss Tarabotti, and therefore when Miss Tarabotti and she are having conversations, Miss Tarabotti's escapades really are quite terrifying for poor Miss Hisselpenny, and it's very, very enjoyable to see her reactions to some of the things that Miss Tarabotti gets up to, and I really, really enjoyed her as a character. Her reactions were funny, her reactions were hilarious, and she just made some of these scenes within this book really, really enjoyable to read about. There was one scene during this book which takes place involving Alexia and Professor Lyall, and I really, really enjoyed that because it talks about some very sensitive and funny subjects, and the way that it is done and the way that it's described and the reactions of the people who are involved was absolutely hilarious, and I really, really enjoyed that scene. It made me really giggle quite a lot out loud, so that's a very good thing. The story itself, besides being very funny and very well written and filled with awesome characters, largely revolves around a few problems that the paranormals of this world have been having with disappearances. certain vampires and werewolves have been disappearing and no one knows why. Miss Tarabotti, adventurous as ever, and Lord Micon, who is the head of Burr and therefore is compelled to investigate, are both going to seek their own way to find out what is going on, and therefore they both get sucked in their own way into this big kind of plot and adventure, and it's really great to read about. I really enjoyed in the second half of the book where the steampunk elements really came into play and we got to see a lot more of that. I think that's something that will be developed further in book number 2, 3 and 4 and all the rest. I believe there are 5 books in this series, so I'm very excited about continuing on. My plan is probably to read Soulless, which is book number 2, in the month of February, if I can fit it in, which hopefully I will be able to. And I'm really excited about these books in general. I definitely think that they are the sort of book that I never would have picked up unless people had recommended them highly to me. And because I got recommended these books and I picked them up, I'm so glad, and I'm now going to recommend them to you. I ended up giving the first one a 4 out of 5 star rating, which is really good because it was such a short book and so different from what I usually read. But it really captivated me, it made me laugh, it made me smile, it was really enjoyable. There were some darker bits, there were some romance bits, there was some really interesting bits. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I would say that this is not a PG kind of book. There are some very steamy scenes that happen within this, but it is a really great fun read, and I would love to know your thoughts if you have read this series, so do leave them for me down below, and I would love to chat to you guys about this series in the future. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat about the